Here we have Nelson Mandela, my grandfather, reflecting after coming out of jail. He spent about 18 years, and the rest was spent at a place called Victor Verster. And they were trying to break him down mentally to say, Mandela, if you come out of jail and if you denounce your movement, if you denounce your comrades and stop fighting against us, we will give you this house for you to live and enjoy for the rest of your days with your family. And of course, we know that Nelson Mandela never agreed to do none of that. See, it says here, keeping Nelson Mandela in jail for almost 3 decades never meant that this international icon of liberation was forgotten. The majority of black South Africans always saw him as the symbol of their struggle against oppression and the apartheid. Government knew he was a lot more than just a prisoner. 466 in 1964, which was the year that he was actually jailed. Hi, my name is Ndaba Mandela. I was born in Soweto, Johannesburg, South Africa, and I am the grandson of Nelson Mandela. The first time I met my grandfather was at Victor Verster, just before he was released in 1990. Our parents had told us we were going to jail. So as an 8-year-old, 7 years old, I had a typical image of what jail was like. Concrete bars with dogs and security, etc. But when we got there, it was unlike what I had imagined. It was a house. There was a swimming pool. I never had a swimming pool. When we met our grandfather, he was so happy to see us. How are you? What's your name? What's your favorite subject at school? And I never knew what I wanted to do when I grew up. And after that day, I told myself, when I grow up, I want to go to jail. I just began to realize that my grandfather was a larger-than-life character. And it was so amazing to me because they had never discussed this man in our home. You couldn't mention the Mandela name. So for a long time, I never heard about him. And then when I do hear about him, I go to jail. It's not really jail. And then a couple of days later, we then go out, and we are part of the parade, and I just see thousands of people, right, on each side of the road as we're walking down. And my grandmother and my grandfather were, lifting up their fists in the air. And so I did the same thing, and I thought, this is amazing, this is fascinating. My grandfather is the biggest human being in the world. Just before he became president in 1993, I was living with my parents in the house that's now the museum on Vilakazi Street. We were playing marbles outside the house with my friends, and this black BMW rolled up. Out came a man wearing a suit and tie, came directly to me, and he says to me, "Are you Ndaba?" And I say, "Yes," and I'm kind of confused because I've never seen this man before, but yet he knows my name. He says, "I've been sent by your grandfather to come and fetch you." And I said, "Oh, my grandfather that I last saw 3 days ago." "Yes." I said, "No, I'm not going with you." The man is shocked. "Are you stupid? Do you want me to get fired? Do you have any idea who your grandfather is?" And I say, no. In the back of my head, I'm thinking, stranger danger, right? And eventually the man gave up and he left. So when my father came home later that day, I then told my father what had transpired. And my father says, "If that man comes again, you should go with him." Just like that. Lo and behold, the man comes back later that week. I jump into the car and off we drove to the leafy white suburbs of northern Johannesburg. And we approach this gate. Now there's men wearing suits with earpieces. We go inside. Now I'm inside the house and there's a whole lot of commotion. There's ladies cleaning. I met Mama Oli for the first time. Mama Oli was the cook. She made me the most delicious sandwich. And as I finish the sandwich, this tall figure comes, my grandfather, and he says, "Ndaba, your father never had the opportunity to go to university. So I'm sending him to university. I don't want him to worry about you. So he will go to university, and while he's at university, you will stay with me, I will look after you." And that is how I moved in with my grandfather. I stayed with him till the end. I remember once he walked past my room, and my room was untidy, upside down. I was a young kid. I was probably 13 years old at the time. He says, "Ndaba, you must not have an untidy room. You cannot live like a pig. Because when you're looking for something, you're gonna struggle to find what you're looking for. Now you're wasting your time looking for something. Everything has to be in its place, everything has to be neat." So my grandfather showed me how to fold pants, how to fold a shirt, how to fold a t-shirt. He even showed me how to make up my bed. And he's doing this by example. And then at the end, he took a medicine ball and he said, hey, you must also exercise. Showed me how to exercise stomach, how to do a push-up. And that was him, the military man, coming out. And so throughout my life, different lessons were coming out, as I grew older. Remember, he hardly had that experience of being a father. So Nelson Mandela, left his family when my father was 4 years old to go and join the struggle movement, which is what a lot of people don't understand, that he left his son, wife, and 2 kids when his son was 4 years old to go and fight for the freedom of the nation. And so I think to him, being a father was more about providing and protecting for the family. So when he came out of jail, he actually paid for all his grandkids' school fees. He bought each of his kids a house. But the relationship that he had with my father was a very disconnected, disjointed relationship. That definitely played a role in him taking me in. Because leaving his son at the age of 4 years old, then his first son died while he was in prison. So I think the amount of guilt that had been pent up in him for missing fatherhood, I think those things kind of haunted him somehow. So what better way to try and remedy that by taking care of your son's sons? It was a dinner says, Ndaba, you are my grandson. Therefore, people will look at you as a leader. Therefore, you have to get the best marks in class. And I was like, whoa, 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 the pressure. Why can't I just be a normal kid? Why do I have to be a leader? Because you're a leader, And only later in life did I understand the importance of what he was saying. The pressure, that's how diamonds are created, right? Through great pressure exerted underground, here comes this thing that we call a diamond that is so valuable in society today. So our parents want us to become diamonds. They want us to shine because we do not have an idea of how much power we have. We are capable of doing much more than you think you can. I have been very lucky to have been taught by my elders about our genealogy. So my grandfather is also known as Madiba. Now Madiba is not a name that is given to him. Madiba is actually a clan name. So I myself, I am Madiba. All the men in our clan are Madibas, and all the women in our clan are Madlomo. So Madlomo is the female version of Madiba. The Mandelas come from the 4th house of the Temple Kingdom. That's known as the junior house. Now the junior house has a very specific role to play within the kingdom. First responsibility is to be a mediator, and then secondly, to be a counselor to the king. So I, gained a lot of confidence and understanding that the community, they see you in a certain light, whether you like it or not. You have to stand up to that light. And the way they see you is really as a leader, as a beacon of hope, as a person who can bring opportunity, as a person who can change their life, as a person who can contribute in an unlimited way. And whatever dreams and hopes they have, you are part of that because you are the person who can bring it, who can unleash it, and who can take it to the world. So we have far more responsibilities than just being a leader. A leader actually is not about being the best. It's not about being number one. A leader is about serving your community. Reconciliation played a very major role in my grandfather's life, not just politically, but also individually. My grandfather was quite strategic in terms of who he had on stage with him when he became a president. We had the family, we had friends, close associates, and we had his jailers, his arch enemies, right there on stage. Because to him, peace and reconciliation is very key in creating a new dawn. One of the things that he said is, if I did not forgive my enemies, I would still be in jail even though I had been set free. My grandfather very much treated everybody the same. Obviously, this is a man that fought for human rights and dignity, etc. The one time, I was having lunch with my grandfather, and Mama Oli comes in and says, Madiba, it's a call, it's Queen Elizabeth on the line. And my grandfather says, put her through. And he picks up the phone, and he says, hello, Elizabeth, how are you? And I could see that my grandmother at the time, Graça Machel, she was very antsy and she was uncomfortable, and you could see she was just, as they talked, eventually he put down the phone. And she says, Madiba, how can you call the queen by her name? You're supposed to say Your Majesty. And my grandfather says, but why? She calls me Nelson. We always call each other by first name. And then he says, do you forget that I'm a prince? And I think he was one of the very few people that actually had that kind of privilege. Again, it's a testament of the type of individual and man that he was. My grandfather had a profound belief in the youth. When my grandfather saw kids, he would lose his attention for anything else. It would go 100% to the children. But that is one thing that he cherished more than anything. My grandfather said, after all those years spent in jail, the one thing that I truly missed is the sound of children. In jail, they never got to hear the sound of children. And what does the sound of children represent? A hope to create a better world. That's one thing that he always reminded the young people, is that you are the leaders of tomorrow. I want to encourage young people to dream. And I say to young people, I want you to dream so big that your dreams scare you. If your dreams don't scare you, you are not dreaming big enough. So my grandfather said, it is in our hands to work together to make this world a better place. When you look at Martin Luther King, when you look at Coretta Scott King, you look at all the different heroines and heroes that we've had, they all started off with a dream. But those dreams is something that you have to work on a daily basis, step by step. How do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. It's been more than 10 years since my grandfather passed, and the way I see him today is still very much the grandfather. Of course, there'll always be the leader of the nation, but the personal relationship we had was really amazing in terms of all the lessons that he taught me and how he spurred me on to become a leader in my own right. What I appreciate now more than before is when I look at pictures of him and my son, because my son got to spend time with him. My son has memories of him. And when I look at those pictures, I appreciate that in a much more different way than I had when I was in that moment. Ooh, the memories here are actually highlighted in a similar way that they've done at the Nelson Mandela House in Vilakazi Street. Beautiful pictures. I remember that one right in the center at my grandfather's funeral. We found this record. It's the marriage record for your grandfather, Nelson Mandela, and grandmother, Evelyn Massey. Oh, by the way, I am from the first marriage, and I've never seen this before. This is amazing, actually. I pictured the wedding. So, by the way, you know who was the matchmaker? It was Walter Sisulu. And he's right there standing next to my grandmother, Evelyn. It's so funny because they're not in the center, they're like off-center. And Walter Sisulu, the matchmaker, is the one in the middle. My great-grandmother, she's holding and showing off her son, Nelson Mandela, to a group of children. You see how proud our parents are of their children. And that is a picture that she last saw before he went to jail. She hadn't probably seen him in over a decade by the time she's showing this picture to these babies, We have a family cemetery in Kuno, which is across the road. But my grandfather decided he did not want to be buried in the family cemetery. He wanted to be buried on the farm, which is where we put him. He wants to be looked over, so we created a new cemetery for him. And then it was decided by the family that he should not lie there by himself, he should lie there with his kids, which is my father, my uncle that I was named after, and the 6-month-old Makaziwe that passed away. My book is called Going to the Mountain, Life Lessons from My Grandfather. I was inspired to write the book because young people have started to forget who Nelson Mandela is. I wanted to write about Nelson Mandela in a different light. Nelson Mandela, not the president, not the leader, but the grandfather, so he can relate more to young people. The way I wrote my book was in very plain, simple language for everybody can be able to understand, and obviously to share the lessons that he taught me about leadership. Those lessons should be known by everybody. My grandfather talked about all the mountains that you have to climb in order for you to achieve your goals. But as you climb that mountain, what about the mountains that your ancestors had to climb in order for you to get to where you are today? Those are the mountains that we also have to give acknowledgement to. Because without those ancestors who have climbed those great hills and great mountains to get you to where you are, where would you be today? So that is why it's also important for us to find out who we are. Who is our grandparents? Where do we come from? What is our genealogy? Because that is also what is a part of that makes us great, or a part that makes us weak, or a part that makes us stronger. So in order for us to know where we're going, we need to know where we are coming from.